Hey everybody, it's your old pal Tom from the Tom Gulley Show here. Shoe? With another cold open. I'm less than 10 words into it and already losing the ability to speak. Tonight, let me tell you about the still unsolved disappearance of Maura Murray, which on February 9th will have happened 22 years ago. Yet it is still in the public foresight, and a very large and caring family is still searching for answers, and we will cover all of the inexplicable details of that disappearance tonight on the program. Normally, this is when I have an amusing anecdote. We have to allow a certain amount of time for our live interactive YouTube show to propagate its chat room. But this is for you audio podcast folks that probably would be a little confused if you heard 6 minutes of music starting the program, which you will hear 6 minutes of music. It's coming up. You can fast forward through it if you like. But that's just so people can get into the chat room, and normally I discuss events of the day, personal things that have happened to me, and that's what I'm going to do right now. I used to watch a show, and of course, you know, every Sunday afternoon we do a show on a television program of the past. This weekend, for example, we're doing one of my top 5 shows of all time, A Man Called Shenandoah, and I will sing the theme song. Guaranteed. But I've been binge watching, and I will binge watch tonight and until all 8 seasons are done of Homicide, Life on the Street. Incredible show. The first appearance of John Munch, who is a character that has appeared on more television programs than any other character in TV history, played by the late, great Richard Belzer. I can't recommend it enough. It's on Tubi. You might want to start watching it now. That way you'll be ready in, well, about 10 days when we do the show on it. Also, very exciting news. Just confirmed today a special guest star on the Tom Gulley Show. It'll happen February 2nd. Broadcasting legend of radio and television and Channel 11 in Los Angeles, CNN, you name it. Newsman, broadcaster Hal Eisner will be on the program. So, very excited about that. And he will tell us about his accidental 58-year journey into the world of broadcasting. So big things coming up on the program. Very excited about tonight's show as we delve into another unsolved missing persons case. And with that being said, the aforementioned 6 minutes of music prepared by our incredible music director, Leon Kennedy. And we'll be back in just a second when I tell you about Maura Murray.
Sometime in the night, somewhere past the evening light, there's a man talking just out of sight, making sense so the wrong and the right. Somewhere past the talking head, some time to ignore what they said. There's a chair, a desk, a glowing sign, and Tom Gulley's right on time. No scripts, no nets, no safety rails, just sharp ideas and strange little tales. You listen and you lean back slow and just let it go. We're in with Tom Gulley tonight, where the questions land just right. Laugh a little, think a little more than you did before. Happy we'll be when we hear the signals loud and clear. You won't be touching that dial once you're here. Sometime when you know he's there, somewhere in the evening air, There's a light o'clock, the studio glow, and Tom Gulley's running the show. Callers roll in, the clock spins around, truth and nonsense both get found. Every night's a brand new ride, with Tom as the guide. No scripts, no nets, no safety rails, just sharp ideas and strange little tales. You listen in, you lean back slow, and just let it go. We're in with Tom Gulley tonight, where the questions land just right. Laugh a little, think a little more than you did before. Happy we'll be when we hear the signals loud and clear. You won't be touching that dial once you're here. I know it, without a doubt. That theme comes on, I'm locked in now. Everything just fades
Hey everybody, what's going on? What's hot? What's hip? What's happening? What is shaking tonight? Let me tell you about the inexplicable unsolved disappearance of Maura Murray. It's another one of these cases that so many things defy explanation, and you won't believe it, but she has a very large and loving family that have kept this story alive for what will be 22 years. Upcoming on February the 9th. We will tell you all about it. Before we get started, please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. All those absolutely free things you can do. They only cost you a click that will help spread our little show here. Gosh knows we need it very badly. And, do us a favor. We have super chats in our YouTube chat room. We have memberships. We have gifted memberships. If that's not your speed, just go to the YouTube description and you can do the PayPal where you give the most, I get the most, and Google doesn't get anything. Yeah, that'll make you feel good, right? Also, we have the TomGulleyShow.com. There are a few archived podcasts there, a couple hundred. And also our merchandise store. If you are into the podcast, the audio podcast, we're on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and a dozen or two others. I don't really know everywhere our audio podcast is, frankly. It's wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. Let's go to our chat room very quickly before we get going. Johnny Brooks is here. I keep calling him Johnny Brooks. Is Johnny Books. He says, yes, I'm a gully head for life. And then my catchphrase, what's it to you? Yes. Chef's here. He is in the kitchen with the legendary Chef Neil, Cooper, Mike, and Charlie. And they are holding the whole place down. That is the Skyline Club in Indianapolis. Top of the tall building there. You can't even see the menu unless you're a member. It's probably one of those fancy places they change the menu so much they don't publish it. But you got to be a member just to get one of those $150 tomahawk steaks. And I hope the whole crew is doing great tonight. So let's get started. Maura Murray. On February the 9th, 2004, Maura Murray, 21-year-old nursing student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, disappeared after a single vehicle crash on Route 112 near Woodsville in a village near the town of Haverhill, New Hampshire. And that's just where it gets started. That is the most reduced description anyone can give because there is so much more to the story. Maura Murray, born in 1982 in Brockton, Massachusetts, fourth child of Fred and Lori Murray. She has several siblings, an older brother, two older sisters, a younger half-brother. Graduated from Whitman-Hanson Regional High School in Hanson, Massachusetts, where she was a star on the school's track team. And I'll be showing you some pictures of her competing when she was accepted into the United States Military Academy in West Point, New York. Yes, West Point, where she studied chemical engineering for 3 semesters. Believing West Point wasn't necessarily the best fit for her, she transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst after her freshman year to study nursing. In November of 2003, 3 months before her disappearance, Murray admitted to using a stolen credit card to order some food from several local restaurants. The charge was continued to December and was to be dismissed after 3 months of good behavior. On the evening of February 5th, while she was on duty at her security job on the UMass Amherst campus, Murray spoke on the phone with her older sister, Kathleen, And the subject of that discussion was her sister's relationship problems with her fiancé. Around 10:30 p.m., while still on her shift, Maura apparently broke down in tears. When her supervisor arrived at her desk, Maura was, quote, just completely zoned out, no reaction at all. She was unresponsive. The supervisor escorted Maura back to her dorm room around 1:20 a.m., and when asked what was wrong, she said 2 words: my sister. Very close family. The exact contents of this call with her sister would remain unknown until 2017 in October, when her sister Kathleen publicly explained the conversation. Kathleen, person struggling with alcoholism, had been discharged from a rehabilitation clinic that evening, and on the way home, her fiancé took her to a liquor store and she had a relapse, which frankly is very, very common amongst people struggling with alcoholism. On Saturday, February 7th, Murray's father, Fred, visited UMass Amherst, and he told investigators he and Maura went car shopping that afternoon and later went to dinner with one of his daughter's friends. Maura dropped her father off at his motel room and, borrowing his Toyota Corolla, returned to campus to attend a dorm party. She arrived at the party at about 10:30 p.m. At 2:30 a.m. on Sunday, February 8th, she left the party. At 3:30 a.m., en route to her father's motel, Maura struck a guardrail on Massachusetts Route 9 in Hadley, causing about $10,000 worth of damage to her father's car. The responding officer wrote an accident report, but there's no documentation of any field sobriety tests being conducted, and she was driven to her father's motel and stayed in his room the rest of the evening. There was a cell phone call placed to her boyfriend from her father's phone. The participants and content of the phone call remain unknown to this day. Later that morning, her father, Fred, learned that the damage to his vehicle would be covered by his auto insurance, so he rented a car, dropped Maura off at the UMass Amherst campus, and departed for Connecticut. At 11:30 that night, Fred called his daughter to remind her to obtain accident forms from the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles, and they agreed to talk again Monday night to discuss these forms and fill out the insurance claim via phone. That brings us to Monday, February 9th. Shortly after midnight on Monday, February 9th, Maura used her personal computer to search MapQuest for directions to the Berkshires and Burlington, Vermont. The first reported contact Maura had with anyone on February 9th was at 1 in the afternoon when she emailed her boyfriend. I love you more. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking too much of anyone. I promised to call you today, though. Love you, Maura. Maura also made a phone call inquiring about renting a condominium at the same Bartlett, New Hampshire condo association with which her family had vacationed in the past. Telephone records indicate the call lasted 3 minutes. The owner did not rent the condo to Maura, and at 1:13 p.m., she called a fellow nursing student for reasons that also remain unknown. On the afternoon of Monday, February 9th, at 1:24 p.m., Maura emailed a work supervisor of the nursing school faculty that she would be out of town for a week due to a death in her family. And according to her family, no such death had taken place. Maura also said she would contact them when she returned. At 2:05 p.m., Maura called a number which provides recorded information about booking hotels in Stowe, Vermont. The call lasted about 5 minutes. At 2:18 in the afternoon, she telephoned her boyfriend and left a voice message, promising him they would talk later, and that call ended after 1 minute. Maura packed clothing, toiletries, college textbooks, and some other things in her car. When her room was searched later, campus police discovered that most of her belongings packed in boxes, and the art was removed from the walls. It's not clear whether Maura packed them that day, but police at the time said she had packed between Sunday night and that Monday morning. On top of the boxes was a printed email to Maura's boyfriend indicating possible trouble in their relationship. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, Maura drove off the campus in her black 1996 Saturn sedan. And that's what this car looked like. That's not the actual car, but that's an identical model. Classes at UMass Amherst had been canceled that day due to a snowstorm. Lots of snow is coming down. About 10 minutes later, Maura withdrew $280 from an ATM. Closed circuit footage showed she was alone. At a nearby liquor store, Maura purchased about $40 worth of beverages, including Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua vodka, and a box of Franzia wine. Security footage again shows she was alone when she made those purchases. At some point in the day, she also picked up those accident report forms from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Maura then left Amherst between 4 and 5 p.m., presumably via Interstate 91 North. She called to check her voicemail at 4:37 p.m., the last recorded use of her cell phone. To this day, there is absolutely no indication that she had informed anyone about her destination, and there is no evidence that she had actually even chosen a destination. Now, a couple of hours later, sometime after 7 p.m., a Woodsville, New Hampshire resident heard a loud thump outside her house. Through her window, she could see a car up against the snowbank. Remember, tons of snow is falling. And she could see a car up against the snowbank along New Hampshire Route 112, also known as Wild Amonoosuc Road, along the sharp corner adjacent to her home. The car was pointing west on the eastbound side of the road. The resident phoned the Grafton County Sheriff's Department at 7:27 to report the accident. And according to the 911 log, the woman claimed to have seen a man smoking a cigarette inside the car. However, she later stated that she had not seen a man nor a person smoking a cigarette, but rather had seen what appeared to be a red light glowing from inside the car, potentially from a cell phone. A passing motorist, a school bus, had a driver who lived nearby, and that driver stopped at the scene. He saw the car as well as a young woman walking around the vehicle. The bus driver noticed the young woman was not bleeding or visibly injured, but she was cold and shivering. He offered to call for help. The woman asked him not to call police. One of the police reports says she pleaded with him not to call police. And she assured him she had already called AAA. AAA has no record of any such call. Knowing there was no cellular reception in the area, the bus driver continued home, and when he arrived home, he called the police. His call was received by the sheriff's department at 7:43, which is about 16 minutes after the first sighting of this accident. The bus driver was unable to see Maura's car while he made the call, but he did notice several cars pass on the road before police arrived. So many other cars had passed this incident. A local resident driving home from work claims she passed the scene around 7:37 and saw a police SUV parked face to face with Maura's car. Now, this resident pulled over briefly and did not see anyone inside or outside either vehicle and decided to continue home. And this is important because that witness's statement contradicts the official police log, which has the police arriving 9 minutes later than this resident's account. According to the official police log, okay, a Haverhill police officer arrived at the scene, but the female driver of the wrecked vehicle had disappeared. No one was inside or around the car. The car had impacted a tree on the driver's side of the vehicle, severely damaging the left headlight and pushing the car's radiator into the fan, which made the car completely inoperable. The car's windshield was cracked on the driver's side, and both airbags had deployed, and the car was locked. Which makes me ask, why would someone who was staying with the car and knew they were have locked it? Don't know. There could be a million reasons. Inside and outside the car, the officer discovered red stains that looked to be red wine. And inside the car, he found an empty beer bottle and a damaged box of Franzia wine on the rear seat. He also found a AAA card issued to Maura, blank accident report forms, which she had apparently picked up earlier in the day, some gloves, some CDs, makeup, diamond jewelry, and driving directions to Burlington, Vermont. Maura's Maura's favorite stuffed animal was there, and Not Without Peril, a book about mountain climbing in the White Mountains. The White Mountains are, well, part of them are in New Hampshire, and then there's a small portion of them in western Maine. Missing were Maura's debit card, her credit cards, and her cell phone, none of which have been located or used since her disappearance. Police later reported that the bottles of purchased liquor, remember the Kahlua and the other items, those were also missing. Journalist Joe McGee, writing for the Quincy, Massachusetts Patriot Ledger, summarized the incident. He wrote, "At a hairpin turn, she went off the road. Her car hit a tree. At that point, a person came along who was driving a bus. It was a neighbor. He asked her if she needed help. She refused. About 10 minutes later, police showed up to the scene, and Maura Murray was gone." Now, police traced the vehicle itself, because remember, Maura's not there, and they traced it to Maura and initially treated her as a missing person on the belief that she may have wanted to disappear voluntarily. And this speculation was based entirely on her travel preparations, about which she had said nothing to friends or family, and there was no, at least obvious, evidence of foul play. In 2009, Murray's case was given to New Hampshire's Cold Case Division, and our authorities are handling it as a suspicious missing persons case. But back to the timeline. Between 8 o'clock and 8:30 p.m., a contractor returning home from Franconia, New Hampshire, reportedly saw a young person moving quickly on foot eastbound on the same road, Route 112, about 4 to 5 miles east of where Maura's vehicle was discovered. He noted that the young person was wearing jeans, a dark coat, and a light-colored hood. He did not report the sighting to police. Okay? Did not report this sighting right away due to his own confusion of dates, discovering only 3 months later when he was reviewing some work records that he had spotted the young person on the very same night, February the 9th, that Maura had disappeared. The responding officer and the bus driver drove around searching for Murray throughout the area. Just before 8 p.m., EMS and a fire truck arrived to clear the scene of the accident, and by 8:49 p.m., the car had been towed to a local garage. At about 9:30 p.m., the responding officer left. A rag, believed to have been part of Maura's emergency roadside kit, was discovered stuffed into the Saturn's muffler pipe. And that's just bizarre. She'd obviously been driving the car for some time. When she crashed, it was inoperable. Why would that roadside repair rag be stuffed into the muffler pipe? It makes no sense. Then I can make sense of it. If somebody in the chat can, go ahead. Authorities would later refer to Maura as simply missing at noon the next day, almost 24 hours after the last confirmed sighting of her. And that began the initial investigation. Let's get to our chat room very quickly here. Goat with a $10 donation. Thank you so much for supporting the show, Goat. I appreciate it. And H2BH to you. Paused Up Patriot is here. Hello, Paz. And Stribs is here. Says H2BH Pasta Scene. All right. Good to see you, folks. Nice to have you here. Share the show. Like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. I got a shout out to Lucas Malago, who retweets and likes our Twitter posting every single day. And if everybody did that, it would be so awesome. And if everybody just said, hey, Hepcat, this is a good show. Tom's a square egg. It's interesting and stuff. I think that would be just Jake. It'd be swell. But back to the initial investigation. At a little past noon the next day, a Be on the Lookout report for Maura was issued. She was reported as wearing a dark coat, jeans, and a black backpack. A voicemail was left on Fred's home answering machine at 3:20 the following day, stating that her car had been found abandoned. Fred, her father, was working out of state and did not receive this call. At 5 p.m., one of Murray's older sisters contacted her father to tell him about the situation, and her father, Fred, then contacted the Haverhill Police Department and was told that if Murray was not reported safe by the following morning, the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department would start a search. At 5:17 p.m., the day following the crash, Murray was first referred to as missing by the Haverhill police. Her father, Fred, arrived before dawn on February 11th. At 8 a.m., Murray's family, New Hampshire Fish and Game, and others began to search. A tracking dog tracked the scent from one of Murray's gloves 100 yards east from where the vehicle had been discovered, but then lost the scent. This suggested to police she'd left the area in another vehicle. At 5 p.m., Murray's boyfriend and his parents arrived. Murray's boyfriend was interrogated in private and then was joined by his parents for questioning. At 7 p.m., police said they believed Murray came to the area either to run away or to attempt to harm herself. But her family believed, and believes to this day, that that is extremely unlikely. Maura's boyfriend had turned off his cell phone during his flight to Haverhill. At some point, he received a voicemail that was believed the sound of Maura sobbing. The call was traced to a calling card issued to the American Red Cross. Now, Maura was a nursing student, so perhaps there's something to that. I don't know. Nobody knows. On February 12th, Maura's father and boyfriend held an evening press conference in Bethlehem, New Hampshire, and the next day, the first press coverage was published. At 3:05 p.m., the police reported Maura might be headed to the Kankagama, I'm going to butcher this, Kankamagus, highway area, and that she was listed as endangered and possibly suicidal. The police report also stated Maura was intoxicated at the crash site, although the bus driver who interacted with her had said she did not appear in any way to be impaired. The Haverhill police chief said that, quote, "Our concern is that she's upset or wants to harm herself." A week after Murray's disappearance, her father and boyfriend were interviewed by CNN's American Mornings. Murray's family expanded their search into Vermont, dismayed that authorities there had not been informed of her disappearance because, after all, that was one of the destinations that she had sought out. Although missing persons cases are normally handled by local and state police, the FBI joined the investigation 10 days after Maura's disappearance. The FBI interviewed relatives from Massachusetts, and the Haverhill police chief announced that this search was now nationwide. Also 10 days after the disappearance, New Hampshire Fish and Game conducted a second ground and air search using a helicopter with a thermal imaging camera, tracking dogs, and cadaver dogs. Maura's older sister discovered a ripped pair of women's underwear lying in the snow on a secluded trail near French Pond Road on February 26th, 17 days after her disappearance, but DNA tests found that the underwear did not belong to Maura. At the end of February, about 3 weeks after her disappearance, police returned the items found in her car to her family. On March 2nd, the family checked out of their motel exhausted from the constant search over the past days. Her father, Fred, returned nearly every weekend to continue searching. In April, Haverhill police informed Fred of complaints of trespassing on private property. The March 2004 disappearance of Brianna Maitland in Montgomery, Vermont, 66 miles away from Maura's last sighting, drew comparisons from media and law enforcement due to the similarities in disappearances. However, state police have stated there are no links between the two cases, which I don't know how you can say that if you completely don't know what happened to at least one of these people, if not both. That's just my own speculation. I don't know what they know, and I will openly admit that. They could be right, but just at first blush, well, if you don't know a thing about what happened to one of these people, at least one, you can't say that. On July 1st, police retrieved the items found in Murray's vehicle from her family for forensic analysis, which indicates to me that they had returned those items without not necessarily doing any forensic analysis, but at least a full forensic analysis, or they wouldn't need them back. On July 13th, a 1-mile radius search was performed by nearly 100 searchers, including state troopers, rescue personnel, and volunteers. It was the fourth search around the crash site and the first search performed without snow on the ground. Authorities were most interested in locating the black backpack Maura had in her possession, but not found in her car. Police stated this search discovered nothing conclusive. In late 2004, a man allegedly gave Maura's father a rusty, stained knife that belonged to this man's brother, and the brother had a criminal past and lived less than a mile from where Maura's car was discovered. The brother and that brother's girlfriend were said to have acted strangely after the disappearance, and the man's brother claimed he believed the knife had been used against Maura in the most fatal of ways. Several days after the knife was given to Maura's father, the man's brother allegedly scrapped his Volvo. In other words, he had his Volvo completely destroyed, parted out. It's no longer around. Family members of the man who turned in the knife claimed that he had made up the story in order to obtain reward money in the investigation and that he had had a history of drug use. In 2005, Fred Murray, Maura's father, petitioned the New Hampshire governor, Craig Benson, for help in the search and appeared on the Montel Williams show in November of 2004 to help publicize the case. On February 9th, 2005, the first anniversary of Maura's disappearance, a service was held where the car was found. And Fred met briefly with the new Hampshire governor, John Lynch. I'm going to take a second here just to point out real quickly. This case has been referred to in the missing person or unsolved mystery community as one of the first ones, and perhaps the most prominent one, to have happened during the internet age. Now, I will get into more detail on that a little bit later, but I think it's important to keep that in mind. I can tell you this. Little old Tom Gulley had a talk show in Indianapolis in 1995. And I had an email address from AOL. And I had a page on AOL. And there were message boards. And there was the Usenet. Now, you'll learn that maybe some of the platforms we've come to know and love today weren't around. But this was the beginnings of sort of the internet sleuthing era. In late 2005, this is getting onwards to 2 years after the disappearance. Maura's father, Fred, filed suit against several law enforcement agencies with the aim of just seeing the files they had on the case. On November 1st, 2005, a user named, quote, Tom Davies logged into a message board called Not Without Peril, which was dedicated to discussion of Maura's disappearance, obviously hearkening back to the book that she had in her car. And this person claimed to have seen a black backpack similar to Maura's behind a restroom at the Pemigewasset Overlook, around 30 miles east of Woodsville on Route 112. Senior Assistant Attorney General Jeffrey Strelzin stated that law enforcement was aware of the backpack, but didn't disclose whether it had been taken for forensic testing. The New Hampshire League of Investigators, and they were 10 retired police officers and detectives, along with the Molly Bish Foundation, started working on the case in 2006. Tom Shamshak, a former police officer and a member of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, said, "It appears that this is something beyond a mere missing persons case. Something ominous could have happened here." The Arkansas group Let's Bring Them Home offered a $75,000 reward in 2007 for information that could solve Maura's disappearance. In October of 2006, volunteers led a 2-day search within a few miles of where Maura's car was found. In the closet of an A-frame house approximately 1 mile from the crash site, cadaver dogs allegedly went bonkers, possibly identifying the presence of human remains. Now, this house had formerly been the residence of the man that was implicated by his brother, the same guy who had given Fred, Maura's father, the rusty knife that his brother owned in 2004. A little cleaner way of saying that is, you know, the guy who he said my brother might have done something with this knife? Yeah, well, that residence where that guy lived is where the cadaver dogs went crazy. A sample carpet piece from that home was sent to the New Hampshire State Police, but the results of testing were not released to the public. In July of 2008, volunteers led another 2-day search through wooded areas in Haverhill, and that group consisted of dog teams and licensed private investigators. Maura's case was one of many cited by proponents of a statewide cold case unit for New Hampshire in 2009. Her case was subsequently added to the newly established cold case unit a little bit later that year. In 2010, Maura's father, Fred, publicly criticized the police investigation for treating the disappearance as a missing persons case and not as a criminal matter, and called on the FBI to join in the investigation even further. Jeffrey Strelzin said in February 2009 that the investigation was still active. He said, "We don't know if Maura is a victim, but the state is treating it as a potential homicide. It may be a missing persons case, but it's being handled as a criminal investigation." In 2014, on the 10th anniversary of Maura's disappearance. Strelzin stated that we haven't had any credible sightings of Maura since the night she disappeared. In an article published in the New York Daily News on the 10th anniversary of his daughter's disappearance, it was reported that Fred Murray believed she was no longer alive and that she had been abducted on the night of her disappearance. On February 9th, 2017, the 13th anniversary of Maura's disappearance, Strelzin wrote in an email to the Boston Globe, "It is still an open case with periods of activity, and at times as it goes dormant, there are no new updates to share at this time." In February of 2019, the 15th anniversary of Maura's disappearance, Fred reiterated the belief that he believed his daughter was no longer alive, as well as his suspicions about the nearby house that cadaver dogs had responded to, stating, "That's my daughter, I do believe." So Fred clearly thinks those dogs are reacting to Maura. In early April, excavation was done within the basement of that house. Fred had previously wanted to search the property, but the owners did not cooperate. And I don't know who the owners are, and I don't know what reasons they had, but shame on them. Following the sale of that house, the new owners allowed several searches of the property. However, the excavation conducted in early April found absolutely nothing other than what appears to be a piece of pottery or old piping. In early 2021, at the tree at the site where Maura was last seen, which had been marked with a blue ribbon as a memorial, was cut down by the property owner. Shortly thereafter, a request from Maura's family to have a New Hampshire historical marker placed at the site, which had been submitted in late 2020, was turned down by the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources. And I got to ask, what would it have hurt you to put a marker there? The family of this poor girl is asking you to put a marker there. The tree that had marked the site has been cut down. What would it have hurt? Seems a little heartless. On September 14th, 2021, the New Hampshire State Police announced that bone fragments had been found on Loon Mountain in Lincoln, New Hampshire, approximately 25 miles east of the crash site. Now, Maura had been to this mountain before and had knowledge of that area. According to her sister, the bone fragments were described as pretty small, and it was expected to take at least 2 months to determine whether they belonged to Maura. But in November, it was announced that the remains were not those of Maura Murray. In January of 2022, the FBI issued a national alert in Maura's case and created a violent criminal apprehension profile, allowing multiple law enforcement agencies to share information regarding her case. And in July of 2022, law enforcement in New Hampshire initiated a search in the towns of Llandaff and Easton. In February 2024, on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, New Hampshire officials released an age progression photo of Maura. Now, as I mentioned before, Maura's disappearance has been cited as the first crime mystery of the social media age. Okay? And it generated speculation from the media and the public, specifically on the internet, in online forums and message boards. Writing for Boston Magazine in 2014, Bill Jensen noted, "Now, at least online, it often seems as there's no such thing as a cold case. But when Maura Murray disappeared, the social web was in its infancy. There was no YouTube and no Twitter. On the day Maura went missing, Facebook was 5 days old." And so you can read the history of her case as a parable about the evolution of online sleuthing. In 2005, active discussion of Murray's disappearance was documented on websleuths.com. And in 2007, Facebook and MySpace pages were created dedicated to helping find her. And frankly, that's the reason on Thursdays I do these missing persons shows. Is if you don't know about this case and you want to keep your ears and eyes open, or you want to get involved in some of these message boards, groups, websites, etc., Twitter pages, now known as X, you can. Countless cold cases have been solved by the public in this way. In the years since Maura's disappearance, her case has received media attention from ABC News, News Nation, StoryCorps, television shows American Morning, The Montel Williams Show, 2020, Nancy Grace's Cold Cases, Disappears, The Dr. Oz Show, Boston Globe, People Magazine, Newsweek, 17 Magazine, The New Yorker, Rolling Stone, and from dozens of local and regional newspapers, magazines, radio, television programs, obscure, lightly regarded YouTube shows. I'm referring to this one. It also garnered significant speculation on internet boards, message boards, forums, with theories ranging from abduction to voluntary disappearance. In 2021, and this woman deserves a shout out, Maura's sister Julie started a TikTok account dedicated to bringing awareness to the disappearance of Maura Murray. Her posts include updates, evidence, and tributes. And I should mention that the official Maura Murray Missing website is linked in the description of this program on YouTube. And it's in the description of our audio podcast as well. A 2009 episode of 2020 compared Maura's case to that of Brooke Wilberger, who went missing in Oregon within a few months after Maura's disappearance and was later found deceased. In 2010, Maura was the subject of episode 6 in the first season of Disappeared. In 2017, the Oxygen Network, awesome people, produced a 6-part television documentary miniseries titled The Disappearance of Maura Murray, hosted by journalist Maggie Freeling. The Oxygen miniseries described Maura's disappearance as the first crime mystery of the social media age, having occurred days after the launch of Facebook. There's been books written on it, one of which is True Crime Addict, How I Lost Myself in the Mysterious Disappearance of Maura Murray, by author and journalist James Renner. Now, in the book, Renner proposed the theory that Maura traveled into New Hampshire with a tandem driver and may have disappeared willingly and started a new life elsewhere due to fears her pending credit card fraud case would prevent her being hired as a nurse, or less likely that she was done in by someone she knew. Murray's father, Fred, and the immediate family have disputed this theory. Her father states he believes that she was abducted and is no longer living. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have to tell you about the tragic, still unsolved disappearance of Maura Murray. And again, that website link is in the description. It's in the description of our podcast version, audio podcast, and you got to make the distinction. A lot of people think this is a podcast. At the most, this is a vodcast. I just call it a live streaming show, but our audio podcast and our YouTube show both have the link to that website. And kudos to her sister Julie for keeping the story alive and keeping the search alive. So, hey, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. Man, those things, you can't imagine how they help. They are exponentially helpful to this show, and they don't cost anything. Goat was kind enough to donate $10 to, kind of pay for the whatevers that we got to do for this show. And I appreciate that. We like to meet our goal of, any amount of money every night. That's our goal. Any amount of money. Paz says in our chat room, this is spooky, Tom. It is. It is. And crappy at life, which is both vulgar and awful for a screen name, and at the same time, kind of funny, says H2BH, happy to be here. Yeah, it is spooky, and there's just so many inexplicable elements of it. Where was she going? Why was she leaving? Did she just need a break? I mean, this girl was accepted at West Point. That ain't easy at all. The Guido Samurais here. That's not easy to get into West Point. And she was a track star. The West Point environment is very high pressure. And she, like a lot of athletes, even when she went to UMass Amherst, she might have put a lot of pressure on herself there too. She had the credit card thing. She had wrecked her dad's car. She might have just needed a break. But who knows where she was going? Who knows what she was doing? She's obviously a very independent, accomplished person. Maybe she just said, look, I'm going to just do this because she was that kind of person. I don't know. But there's many inexplicable things about it. There's things that witnesses said happened, that police said didn't happen, or that at least didn't happen at the time they said. The rag in the tailpipe of a disabled vehicle, that doesn't make any sense. It's just, there's a lot of very unexplained things. The dual deployed airbags. A lot of times when airbags go off, people get disoriented or knocked out. But by all accounts, she was lucid. She was not injured. A lot of those people get a bloody nose, whatever. No, she was just cold and shivering. It doesn't make sense that she would just start walking off in the woods, and it also doesn't make any sense that she would walk 25 miles on Route 12 and nobody would have seen her. It doesn't make sense. Absolutely no sense. The call on the American Red Cross calling card that was left, the message that was left on her boyfriend's phone of her, what he says was her sobbing. That doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things that don't add up. And like some of these other missing person cases, I'm a huge fan of law enforcement. Somebody I'm related to was recently tasked to respond to a very big missing case and did an incredible job. Absolutely amazing. And the police usually do. But bordering on 22 years ago, it seems like a lot of assumptions were made about Maura Murray doing all of this intentionally. And while that may have been a logical, valid supposition, I think you always have to go to the most extreme case, which is that it wasn't voluntary and it didn't happen with that person's permission. Just my opinion. Coach Mike Rodick is here. He says, sorry I'm late. Can we start from the beginning? Hello to all my friends in chat. Oh, hey, Tom. Good to see you, Coach. Good to see you. Another good time to mention, if you have a topic you'd like me to do on this show, you can email me at tom@thetomgulley.com. You can put in the chat. Might not write it down, but you can put it in the chat. And we'll do a show on it. Julian Zeezer's here. He says, can you speak for a minute about missing person versus the other from the point of view of investigators? Well, I think, Julian, if someone, to be a missing person, all you have to be is missing. But why are you missing? Are you missing because you want to be? Or you're trying to be? Or are you missing because you are taken against your will? Or you've been disposed of? And I think those are two distinctly different mindsets and investigative procedures. If you think somebody has done it on their own, you might not search for all of the known felons in the area who might have done some abductions before. That's what I mean by you need to take that tact. The evidence that you have at hand will lead you in a certain direction. And your theory, as it regards that evidence, will inform that. So, say they had found some blood in the car. That might be from the crash, but it would then also make someone think maybe that blood is the result of someone assaulting someone. Those are two different pathways. If you think someone is just trying to become missing, they're just trying to disappear from the world, society, whatever, that doesn't necessarily include someone throwing you in a car and driving you somewhere else. And it certainly doesn't include individuals in the surrounding area, which apparently a mile away, people with a criminal background that might have done something like this. So I think it's just too, and also I think there is an urgency and immediacy when someone's been taken against their will. I think I heard on one of the true crime shows, you got 48 hours. Within 48 hours, if someone's been abducted, they're not around anymore. So there's a speed component to that. If somebody's just trying to not be found and is bivouacking in the woods or is checked into a hotel under a different name or is staying with a friend, that's a different thing. I think you've got to make the speed thing happen either way. Ryan Paradisus is here. I can't really decide whether he's a fan of the show or not. He posts a lot about parts of my anatomy, which, I don't know. The Guido Samurai says the Everest disaster of 96. Is that what you want me to cover? That's a good one. That's a good one. Into thin air. Okay, I'll do Everest 96. It's on the list, Guido. Disaster? Yeah, I guess. Incredibly poor planning. Yeah, I'd say so. I met one of the people from that. By the way, like, share, subscribe, retweet, notification bell. Lucas Malago, thank you again. He's already retweeted and shared the show. He's already done that, as he always does. He's a good egg. He really is. Let me see here if I can find... I think I met one of the people from that. Incidentally, those new to the show know that I sometimes make fun of people for having accidents on mountains. But hey, Guido, guess what? I met Beck Weathers. Oh, yeah. He's from here in Dallas, or at least was living here for a long time. Yeah. Yeah. Julian Caesar says, I've read 2 different editions of Into Thin Air, and it's surprising how different they are. Oh, yes, there are very, very conflicting descriptions of what happened there. And there are descriptions of ropes being torn down and competition between some of the tour guide companies and a lot of other things. Yes. But Beck Weathers is the guy they left for unalive and then stumbled back into camp. And I met him. He gave a speech at an ad agency that I worked at. It was supposed to be motivational. But for me, it was like, I don't know, man. I got a hobby, but when I come back from my hobby, I've got all my body parts and things. That's why we're here. Of course, Tom, I can't wait. Well, I'll make that one of the shows for next week. If you guys are that excited about it, I will make that one of next week's shows. I haven't actually programmed all of next week. I should let you know that I do have some very exciting guests coming up on the show. I mentioned broadcast legend Hal Eisner will be on the show on February the 2nd. I've got another guest I can't tell you about, but I can say, and it hasn't been confirmed, so don't take this to the bank yet, but I would tell you that it was intimately related, intimately involved in the O.J. Simpson, Nicole Brown, Ron Goldman slayings. But I got to get that confirmed. It's not confirmed yet. So, guys, I really wish you would please like, if anything, just please like. It just click the like. And then also share, subscribe, notification bell, retweet. Those really, really, really help, man. They really do. We got to get some more like-minded individuals in here. People like you. Let's see here. The Guido Samurai says, I can't tell you how I'm going to pass away, but I can 100% tell you it won't be on Everest. Yeah, see, I don't get it. To me, the hardest part. Oh, Guido Samurai says, I liked the notification. Thank you, Guido. You guys hear about like the Mount Kilimanjaro? Do you know that you can just hike to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro? You don't have to have ropes or special boots or a pickaxe or any of that stuff. You can just walk to the top of it. Now, it's a tough hike, and you might have to acclimate as you go up. See, to me, that's the toughest part of Everest, because I've watched all of these mountain climbing, K2 and all these other. I am fascinated as well. But one of the hardest things about Everest that most people don't know, people think you just show up with your ropes and your helmet and your parkas and just go on up. No. You have to go to base camp And then you have to go up to the next camp and acclimate and come back down. And then you have to go to the one past that, back that, and acclimate to the altitude and then go back down. And then you have to keep doing that till you get to that final camp and then go up to the top. And when you're at the top, you're in what they call the death zone, where you are literally dying while you're there. You're getting, if you don't have supplemental oxygen, and with the long lines, the bottlenecks and stuff they have now, a bunch of really awesome climbers that have already summited have gone up there, and they see the huge line and they just go, forget it. Even some people that haven't summited get up there and see the bottleneck and they go, forget it. These people aren't going to have enough oxygen. And if you don't have the oxygen, you have 33% of the air that you and I are breathing right now. You are literally dying. And here's another fun fact. More people have died on the way down Everest than the way up. And that's true of most mountains. Because think about it. On your way up, you're up, 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 up. You get to the top. You're super tired now. And now you got to go backwards. You got to go down. And that's going back. I could talk about this for a long time. So yes, I am looking forward to talking about Everest 96. You want that to be Monday? I'll make that Monday. You guys tell me what day and I'll make it that day. I'm just that crazy. And we could use several different years, by the way. 96 is probably the most famous and well publicized. There's 1 million documentaries on it. But there's many years that we could have used where a bunch of people didn't make it back. Good night, Gracie. Good to see you, Chef. Chef, I will be showing that pasta dish you sent me on Sunday when we cover one of my top 5 TV shows of all time, A Man Called Shenandoah. And I will be singing the Man Called Shenandoah theme song. I will. Oh, Shenandoah, you're doomed to wander. That's just a little taste. That was just a little taste. So join us Sunday afternoon. A Man Called Shenandoah. Imagine they find you, much like Everest 96, almost frozen to death, shot, stripped half naked. They drag you into town, manage to miraculously nurse you back to health, and you don't know who you are because you've been headshot. You got amnesia. And they call you Shenandoah. Anyway, you roam the West searching for clues about your identity. It's so good. Let's see some of your comments very quickly. The Guido Samurai says it's literally insane. Euphoria is a killer. The Guido Samurai says I'm more fascinated by the stupidity than the mountains. Well, and I guess there's people that will say he climbed Mount Everest, and it's like, man, I don't know. I run into a lot of people that are like, and I get it. Majesty of man, conquering nature, all that. But some people will go, I guess those people just live a little more free, a little more unbound by convention than the rest of us. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess those people are just living a dream that they just had to capture. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think Michael Jordan lived a pretty good dream. I think I'm living a pretty good dream right now doing this show. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some dreams are bigger than others. Okay, fine. And by the way, going to Everest costs an incredible amount of money. And if you don't have an incredible amount of money there, you can go up with one of the cheapo companies, and guess what? You're in big trouble. They're going to give you those oxygen tanks with the faulty valves that don't work in the 40 below temperatures at 27,000 feet. And you don't want that, because hypothermia and pulmonary edema and all that, you don't think straight. You don't. Come on, man. You are so tired when you are summiting Everest that you have to take one step and stop for 20 or 30 seconds to get the energy to take another step. And there are people that have done what are called quick climbs, where they knew nobody else was going to be on the mountain, without any oxygen. Some of the Sherpas back in the day didn't use oxygen. And by the way, are the Sherpas not the unsung heroes there? They're the ones rescuing people when they go belly up and everything else. I mean, we'll cover it. I'm going to have a lot to say about it, and some people won't like me for it. I wrote an article once called "On Idiots Who Climb Mountains," and I don't get it. I'm never going to get it. Guido Samurai says, that is so wild. It is so wild. It is. It is. I understand boating down the Nile. I understand crossing the Serengeti Plain. I understand a lot of things that aren't that safe. But let me just encapsulate it very quickly here before we tie up the show. No one in history has ever plummeted to glory or safety. Nobody plummets to glory or safety. When you plummet to your... See, you filled it in your head. I didn't have to say it. Here's another thing. Gravity is undefeated against humans. Undefeated. Throughout history, gravity is undefeated. I don't want to go up against that team. Guido Samurai says, I can't wait. Well, it's Monday's show, so. Stroberdolb says, Tom, sing Waltzing Matilda. Which version? Coach Mike Rodick says, I've worked in negative 40 weather, not fun, and I definitely wouldn't pay someone for that experience. I've worked in negative 40 weather, negative 37 air temperature, not wind chill. You don't want to do that. Your skin freezes like after 90 seconds of exposure. And by the way, negative 40 is the same temperature in Celsius and in Fahrenheit. Fun fact from the Tom Gulley Show. That's the other thing. Once these guys' fingers turn black, the part that turns black, you can't go down there and get some hot tea and some soup and they wrap you up in warm blankets and that comes back. That's getting clipped off when you get to the bottom. You know how many of those dudes and dudettes have gone up there and they've lost their fingers down to the knuckle or their toes, or I have to imagine, because the nose and the ears get it too, certain other digits of the body. I don't want to think about it. I didn't have the nerve to ask Beck Weathers, but it was because he gives this speech. I won't get into the details of why his speech was ridiculous at this agency. Basically, we had just lost 2 giant accounts. And everybody, just from a business standpoint, knew there's going to be huge layoffs at this company. And the trades were reporting it. This is a giant advertising agency. The Ad Week and Ad Age, they're reporting it, and we're getting these memos and emails. I don't believe anything you see in the papers. And everybody's like, well, that's silly. No, that's what happens. That's what's going to happen. And so this guy comes in to speak. By the way, Stephen Sondheim also came in and played the piano for us during this period of time because one of the owners knew all these famous people. And it's like, you really think this is making any of us feel better when we know that out of the 700, 800, 900 people that work here, 300 are going to go bye-bye and just whenever, and this was, hey, don't worry, that's not going to happen, that's not going to happen, that's not going to happen. Then we got in one morning and my boss called me in and goes, okay, here's a list of people that you have to tell they're gone today. Here's a list of people, the other creative directors. It's like, oh, great. And then the next day we got in and everybody that survived got a piece of paper that said, in order to make all you guys be able to stay, everybody's got to take a 10% pay cut. And I'm like, there's no going backwards here. I'm sorry. But anyway, Beck Weathers came in, who famously, and we'll cover it on Monday, famously had been left because you can't help another person when you're coming down Everest or at a certain point going up. You can't because your life is then forfeit. Okay? And so they left Beck Weathers. They just left him because that's what you do. You're climbing up and everybody's, oh, we're buddies and everything else. And on the way, then they left him. And he wanders into camp like midnight, 2, 3 in the morning, whatever it is. They thought he was a goner. He wanders into camp. They managed to get him back. Say goodbye to your nose. And they're taking skin from various other parts of his body and trying to make a new nose. And I'll have some pictures of Beck Weathers. No, don't you worry about that. And he lost a bunch of fingers and part of his arm and a bunch of other things. And so they bring him in to give us this motivational speech. And afterwards, a lot of people were like, wow, that was really inspiring. And really, just no matter what, you got to just keep. And I'm like, what's inspiring about that? He went on a vacation. He was an anesthesiologist or something. He's a rich guy. He went on a vacation. He went and pursued a hobby, and he didn't come back with all of his body parts. That sounds like a failure to me. It's not inspiring to me. Well, what about the fact that he survived? What else are you going to do? Punt? Yeah. Julian Zeta says if your elevator falls out of control, you jump at the last moment, you'll be fine. Yeah, well, if you've got that kind of vertical and you can fight the G-forces. Coach Mike Rodick says it was negative 47 actual temperature, negative 63 wind chill. Well, in Indianapolis, in, I want to say, the winter of 93, 94, it was negative 37 air temperature and like negative 93 wind chill. It was huge winds. And so people were putting cardboard in between their radiator and the grill of their car in order to keep their radiator from freezing, but they were also putting those trouble lights underneath their radiator and their block and blankets to heat it so they could start. It is a thing. Guido Samurai says, right. Anyway, we'll discuss all that on Monday. It'll be a lot of fun. But I didn't see that. I mean, I'm glad for Beck Weathers. He seems like a nice guy, but I didn't see that as inspirational. I saw it as, you need a new hobby, Chester. That's what I saw it as. Why is the picture on my OBS like 9,000 times better than the picture on my... Well, maybe it's just different. I don't know. Stroberdolb says, I didn't know there was different versions, but I knew you'd know this. Waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda, waltzing Matilda with me. Yeah. Thought you were going to ask me to sing Tie Me Kangaroo Down. Anyway, with all that being said, we got a big show planned for you on Monday. A Man Called Shenandoah on Sunday afternoon. And then Monday night, we're going to do the 96 Everest disaster by request. And no Friday shows. We're never doing another Friday show unless I have a guest. Ever. Not that we were doing kind of good and it dropped off. And then we got it back on our feet and we're just getting a little better. This week has been a bloodbath. We're doing terrible in terms of views. I mean, we're really stinking up the joint, kids. We need to word of mouth this thing up a little bit. Anyway, I got a cool song here I can play. If you want me to. I kind of want to play, what's the new one that I like so well? Oh, it's called Tom's Back. Yeah, let's do that one. Ooh, I got to reset the volume level on it. I dig this one. I played two different ones at the start of the show. I'll play this one. Okay. With all that being said, I'm looking at that old clock on the wall. I went way too long this time. Hey, give a shout out to Julie Murray, Maura Murray's sister, who's keeping that story alive on TikTok and everything. The link to her webpage is in the description of both our podcast in audio form and our YouTube page. So give a shout out and some support for her efforts. Mike Rodick says the only person Ice ever heard of plummeting into greatness was Hank Williams Jr., but the greatness part took a while. Well, no, he was already famous. He was already great. And even if he wasn't, he was already the son of Hank Williams. When he fell down that mountain and scraped his face off, he was already a very well-known, popular, famous guy. Great show, Thomas. Thank you, Go. Appreciate it. That old clock on the wall says it's time for me to amscray. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And you can't climb Mount Everest or Denali. By the way, Denali, there's a case to be made, is actually higher in elevation, and it's a long story. With all that being said, I think the only thing left to say is you're going to love this song. And till next time, we'll see you next time.
Tom Gulley's back. Yeah, Tom Gulley's back. We're on the track. When Show. From strange little moments to the things we all know.